Good. 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 Good.
Axeman at the Rose Quarter at Real Rip City. There he is.
Good.
Look at that thing, huh? that's the axe they used to use to behead people. All right, the action never stops at TRIMET. Okay, man, we're having a great time. Yes, we are. All right, back to the TRIMET Board of Directors Safety Strategy session. Oh, by the way, Ozzy responded to my tweet where I made that little production for Sam, and I said, show this to Sam, and he goes, why? See if I can find that. I mean, I didn't expect anything from him. I didn't expect Sam to actually be serious. I mean, Ozzy, here, see, there it is, why? See, so I sent him this, which we've already seen here. All right, I'm making this video. So because Sam DeSue is just another ignorant elitist who doesn't have any idea what's going on in his community. He's in a bubble, and his bubble doesn't include anybody who doesn't agree with him and his little cult. So I made a little video, and one of the cult members, otherwise known as Ozzy Gonzalez, there he is, responded, why? Why should I tell him? Well, Ozzy, I didn't really expect you to tell him. Why would Sam want to know? You know, he's wrong. He made some wrong statements to the board. He got it all wrong. And he told the board the wrong information. I don't expect him to go back. I mean, Sam's job is to lie. He lies about everything. So why would he want to tell the truth about this? He got that wrong. That wasn't Brandon Farley. His name was Eli Ritchie. But don't bother yourself with anything that's factual, Just ignore the people that actually have a problem with your totalitarianism over there. All right, back to this somewhat interesting presentation. Better than that. Oh, yeah. Here's what's happening here. Okay. We're on the presentation where they're telling us how they're going to get the riders back. And what we're seeing here is exactly what we saw with the safety and security. They've bureaucratized the whole thing to the point where it makes no more sense. There's no, I mean, I can tell you how to get your riders back. The first thing you have to do is get your service back. Okay, you don't need any studies, surveys, blue ribbon panels, all of your garbage that you people do. You don't need that. You need to get your service back to pre-pandemic levels. You got bailed out by the government to do that, and you didn't do it. You allowed the bus driver shortage to happen like every other place in the country. This was a manufactured shortage by the elite psychopaths who have been destroying our civilization for a long time now, long before COVID started. It's just this has become the pinnacle of their destructive elements, and so now we're at the end times of this destruction that they've been doing. So all of these elites have allowed this to happen, and they're continuing to, because they don't care about the riders. Fuck, they're the lowest people in the world. All the capital projects are moving 100%, as we've talked about a million times. There's been no change there. I think they did actually change the timeline on the brand new bus garage. I think they delayed that a little bit, but all the other ones are running at full speed ahead. But the only thing that was stopped during this so-called pandemic, which was manufactured by government, our totalitarian government, which all of a sudden we have governors and presidents giving us orders. Is like the governor mandates this and we're all supposed to do it. The president mandates that and we're all supposed to do it. This is something new. I mean, I was in shock when President Trump was issuing these edicts. I'm like, who the hell does he think he's a king? Well, that's now gone up exponentially. Now we're at the point where governors and presidents have taken over your life, and they're mandating that you do things with your body. You must get this shot. You are ordered by your leaders to do it. Full-blown totalitarianism, cheered on by the leftist morons who actually, the same people that suffered from the Trump derangement syndrome are now cheering on this totalitarianism. And so here we are, folks. And this is who these people are too. They're completely clueless. They're all going about their business. None of these people lives were affected by any of this. These are all elites, and what we have is a two-tiered society now. The society functions for the benefit of the elites. The bottom 50%, the bottom 20% are actually suffering. No news coverage about them. Everybody from 20% to about 80% is hanging on. And then the top 20% is doing pretty well, with the top 10%, more wealth than ever in history. But nobody's connecting the dots between this and COVID. They have your mind completely messed up. But I'm watching it. I understand it. So they've bureaucratized this, and it's just ridiculous. So all they need to do is get their servers going. But they've created a situation where that was intentionally created. This whole bus driver shortage was manufactured by the elites. Remember that. So all what we're hearing here is garbage. It's just nothing but garbage. And just like Ozzy's response to me is garbage. Ozzy doesn't care about any of us. Ozzy wants to be mayor. He's a hack. He's a careerist. He doesn't give a fuck about anything. I'm surprised he even communicates with me. He's broken the mold with that. I mean, usually the elitists just ignore the opposition completely, and like we don't exist. Just like Trump did with the majority of Americans, just like Biden does with the majority. They just ignore us. But Ozzy actually engaged, which shocks me. It still shocks me. He's the only one that's ever done it. I know it's bullshit, but I'm surprised he even does it.
I need the time this morning to speak with you. I'm Pat Williams, Director of Security and Emergency Management. Now, I know you reached
the Director of Security and Emergency Management. I wonder what he's been doing this last year. I wonder what he's actually been doing. Not much, I imagine. He's been sitting at home, and we're all hearing all the fucking chaos on the transit system, and there's like no response teams. I mean, it's just chaos. And so I don't know what the hell this guy's been doing, but he's making $200,000 a year sitting at home, and he's going to give us a presentation.
Recently received a presentation with the Reimagined Public Safety, and so two of the areas that I'm going to focus on today, one of them was briefly talked about during that last presentation, but the two topics I'm going to talk about today is we're focusing on high visibility of staff to enhance customer safety and rider experience, and also the training efforts that we've undergone. So I'll start with the high visibility. We've broken this into three categories. So starting with deployment strategies, we're hard at work trying to become nimble and responsible.
Nimble! Use the fucking word. I want to kill people that use that word. You're not nimble. Okay, we know what's going on. We're listening to your system. We listen to it. Okay, we know. You don't listen to it, do you? You're going to meetings.
To help problem solve issues that were traditionally handled by law enforcement and transit police. With the reduction of the transit police, we know that law enforcement is still needed, but we really want to focus their area on responding to crimes on the system and following up on crimes. So we do know that there are so many other uses that the transit police were used in the past, but we know that we can use those to problem solve.
Yeah, the transit police were being used to kick off passengers that drivers don't like. You know, the part of the problem, and one of the reasons the drivers hate me is because, I call out their bullshit. Part of the problem with the transit operators is they're not competent people, a lot of them. Their feelings get hurt, and they want to kick somebody off because their egos were bruised. And that's what police were dealing with for most of this time. And the police finally just got tired of it and said, if you're not being actually threatened, we're not coming out there to just kick off somebody you don't like. I mean, the police have always disdained the TRIMET people anyway. I mean, they see us as low class, and we are, and the police know it. It's a very low class bunch of people. I'm sorry to say that, but I've been a bus driver for 20 years. You know, there's some great people in transit operations driving those buses. The majority are not great people.
With our existing staff. So we're using databases that TRIMET already has in place, such as the ACID database, to produce stats that will help us deploy our unarmed security.
See, they're using they're using their ACID reports. What a bunch of garbage. It's already garbage.
And our TRIMET staff on the bus and railroad. And so far, we found this to be a very positive experience for both our customers and our staff, mostly our operators. And some of the bus lines that we focused on have been the 72, the 75, the 53, and the 9. And that's
53.
I know when staff have the opportunity to get on other lines, they do when staffing allows or when something comes up. So the next topic will be engagement with customers.
All right, well, that's garbage. I don't know. He says they're out there. I know that the white shirts have been responding to operators. And it does seem, even from my point of view, that the white shirts are handling things appropriately. That's from what I hear. They're getting the people off the buses without a big to-do. Okay, we'll give them that.
So there's a multitude of strategies involved, but primarily we're focused on high visibility, but most importantly, being approachable.
Well, there's no high visibility. I don't hear anything about that.
And that sometimes requires...
Now, Henry Beasley put really, if you want to protect your operators, you need to have cabins for them. Henry Beasley's been on this for years. You just need to have a way so that the people that are pissed can't reach around and attack the operator. The barriers are better than nothing, but that's about it. The operators need to be completely isolated from the riders at this point. It's gotten to the point where they need to be isolated from the riders. I think that they should be completely in their own isolated cabins. They shouldn't be dealing with fares at all, zero. You should have a max style bus system. You shouldn't have the operators dealing with that anymore, and they should be in a cabin. Yeah, that's my strategy. Remove the fares completely from the operators. Okay, forget that. And block off the front of the bus. I mean, I don't know. It's got to be a way you can secure the bus drivers so that the riders have no way to get at them.
Requires our staff to take the first step to meet that customer who may need help, or maybe
and I'm not sure why TRIMET management is so. Why I keep calling them customers. They're not customers. They don't have any options. A customer implies that somebody's there by choice. They want to shop at your store. TRIMET is a monopoly. It's a public utility. They're not your customers. They're riders. But this must be some kind of a marketing gimmick to try to make people feel like there's something they're not, because they're not customers, and they've been using this for a while now.
A little concerned about approaching them. So as you learned from Reimagine Public Safety, we're using a new pilot project called the Safety Response Team to provide additional presence on the system. And so far, the SRT team, which we're calling SRTs, is having a very positive response from not only our customers and staff, but also people near the platforms where they visit.
Okay, well, that answers the question for me as to where this safety response team. I haven't been listening to the MAX side because we can barely watch the bus side. So apparently, okay, I'm glad he said that, because at least we know. Okay, I believe that now that there is actually a safety response team somewhere out there, but it's concentrating on MAX, which I suppose makes sense because the MAX is completely. There's nobody on the MAX trains. I listen to the MAX occasionally, and it's even crazier than the bus. Okay, so that's where they are. There's one team, and it's over on the max.
One specifically was out at 122nd and Burnside, and we had a neighboring dental office, so we're so happy to see them out there. And then the last is reducing operating.
What do you mean you had a neighboring dental? Who cares about the dental office? We're caring about the riders here and the drivers, not the dental office.
Assaults and service disruptions. So this is one of our biggest challenges. As you know, you can't predict an assault when that's going to occur, but our statistics are showing that disrupted passengers almost always lead to some type of verbal dispute or a physical assault. And so for that reason, we're holding weekly security meetings with not only our transit police, but our security and TRIMET staff to help better deploy resources throughout the system.
So they're having weekly meetings with bureaucrats. That's not going to help. You got to get more safety teams out in the field. Okay, response teams.
This also gives all of our staff time to get to know each other and then help discuss problem-solving methods.
Oh my God. Gets our staff to know each other and discuss problem-solving methods. There you go. Bureaucratization of a problem. It doesn't lead to any result. It's bureaucracy.
And what works for law enforcement will not work for security sometimes or TRIMET staff. And so it really gives our staff time to bounce things off each other. And then the last thing I'll talk about is something that we started back in December of 2020. And you got a little snapshot of that with the last presentation. But we've been holding a lot of training at our new public safety office. And we've been focused on mostly cultural competency, de-escalation tactics, and mental health first aid. Those are the areas that we're focusing on. But a lot of the classes, as you saw before, bias busting, we've had a large amount of employees through that, unconscious bias, emotional intelligence, and improving interactions with those in distress and microaggressions.
I don't know about you, but I have not heard any of that with the operators. It's just getting worse. It's not getting better.
And so with that, I'll pass it back over to Jason.
So that's it. That's all you're going to say, huh? Well, that's a bunch of nothing. He just said a bunch of nothing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you, Karen. I really, really appreciate it. And board members, please understand that what we're seeing on our system with cleanliness and safety and security issues is not unique to TRIMET. We're seeing those same things in our community, and we always say what we see in our community, we'll also see in our system. So we're obviously taking a unique approach to how we're handling it on our system, and there's just been a lot of work behind the scenes to get us all on the same page and moving us forward, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, right. You haven't done anything. Okay, nothing. I don't know what they're doing behind the scenes, but it's not translating to real world.
Our next presentation is by Tom Mills, our Director of Mobility, Planning, and Policy. If you remember those three key areas that Madeline pointed out, service was a part of it. So Tom, you can take it away.
Thank you, JC. And Kim, if we can advance to the next slide. Just want to let you know, well, first off, thank you, Chair Simmons and TRIMET Board for having me today. We on the mobility planning and policy side have been looking at how service, amenities, and access, how we can make changes to attract riders back.
See, now this is garbage, okay? This is complete garbage. You don't need amenities. You don't need access. You need to get your service back to what it was before COVID. Okay, you need to do that, and then you can work backwards. Whatever's not being used, you can cut back on. They're approaching this backwards. They're approaching this whole thing backwards as a bureaucracy.
The first thing we need to really understand is what has happened to our ridership. So this slide here is showing our ridership today compared to fall of 2019. And you can see the large decreases, particularly in the morning peak rush hour. We've seen the largest decrease followed by the afternoon peak. But what's also interesting about this is the shape of the ridership. So previously, we kind of had two humps, a morning peak and an afternoon peak. And now
well, we can tell you for sure that these so-called choice riders that they've been pandering to for decades, at least for 2 decades, are gone. Nobody, would you take this system now if you had a choice? Hell no. The only people that are on TriMet now are transit dependent.
Ridership really is kind of building to an afternoon peak. So just one peak in the day right now. Now that could change if people return to work, but right now this is what the ridership seems to be doing. Next slide, please. The next slide will show you where we've actually been able to retain ridership the most, and that is on Sundays. So Sundays, you can see the ridership has not dropped as significantly. Furthermore, the shape of the ridership is about the same. It again is kind of an all-day build-up to a peak in the afternoon, although this peak is a little bit earlier, starting about 2 to 3 o'clock is where the Sunday peak ridership is. Saturday, I'm not showing, but it's a very similar graph. The decrease is more significant, but the shape is about the same. Next slide, please. Next, we also decided to take a look at...
See, Sunday ridership, because they're not commuters, they're transit dependent. The transit dependent riders are still there. I mean, I don't need to be a transit executive to be able to see this. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by other things.
The bus lines that are performing the best during the pandemic, as well as those that were performing the worst, and kind of get a sense of what are the common factors among them. So this slide here is showing the 10 best performing bus lines during the pandemic. So really what it's showing is the smallest percentage decrease in rides between spring of 2020 and spring of 21. Now, one of the common factors you notice if you, as you get to know these areas, is that a lot of these bus lines are serving where essential workers are trying to go to. So, for example, Swan Island is on this list. Out in Troutdale, line 81, which serves the Amazon distribution center, is on this list. Lines serving Clackamas Town Center are still on this list. Now, it is important to note that a number of these lines serve equity communities as well as entry-level jobs, and so we didn't cut back the service on these lines, or at least not as much in some cases.
So that's weird. The best performing lines are these? 30, 48, 53, 76. None of these lines really had that much service, really.
So they do have more service, allowing them to carry more people. But it is interesting to see the areas that they serve. There are some commonalities there. And the next slide, please. And the next slide will show us the largest decrease in rides and where we're performing the worst. Some of the commonalities you can see here, first off, they're all west of the river. They predominantly are in areas that are low density development, and so there was low ridership prior to the pandemic anyway. A number of these lines only operate during rush hour, and many of them, as you can see, go into downtown Portland. So this is not too surprising, knowing that a lot of downtown folks who work in downtown Portland are now working from home. So that's, a lot of these lines really serve the commuter market more than an all-day market. And so that's why you see them, taking the biggest hit among all our lines. Next.
I just got a notice that Chuck Ingram has died, one of my good friends from TriMet days. I might have to cut this short because I knew he was sick. I didn't realize he was just close to death. Let's do a little bit more of this, and then I'm going to switch over. I have to do something else for Chuck.
Slide, please.
I know that guy that was doing all this.
And so what are we kind of expecting to happen based on our best information? Well, we do think that the ridership will return, not completely, but we will see a good bump in ridership when workers would start returning to downtown. We know that not all workers are going to return, but we do expect to see an increase. And that's not just downtown, that is workers across the system. We do expect to see an increase. Also, as schools reopen, and of course, schools have reopened, and I know many of you received emails about overloaded school trips.
Yep.
That happens every year. We always have to kind of adjust, and we have. So those trips now have enough buses to carry the number of students wanting to ride. I actually find this to be really encouraging. If parents are feeling comfortable enough to have their students ride TriMet to get to school, then that tells me that when the time comes for them to come back to work, they will be riding TriMet as well. Colleges started up this week, so we're anxiously waiting to look at the ridership increases that may have resulted from that, particularly to PSU, PCC, Clackamas Community College, and Mount Hood Community College. But we still have challenges ahead. Ridership won't return to pre-COVID levels right away, as we talked about earlier. We do expect work from home to continue at some level. There has been a cultural change, and we expect that while some people will return for a portion of the week, they still may work from home a few days a week. Also, some other things that are difficult to really measure is just the amount of hesitancy that people might have boarding a vehicle with others. And then, of course, the Delta variant is a factor out there. We don't
The Delta variant, the Mu variant, there's all kinds of variants. They're never going to stop hitting us with COVID shit, okay? This is going to go on forever because it's totalitarianism in reality. Okay, this is what's really happening.
What's happening. The good news is it does seem to be subsiding a bit. Let's hope that there are no more variants coming out.
Lots of them.
Next slide, please. And we do have some challenges that we need to address coming ahead. I mentioned the impact of work from home. Previously we thought this fall we were going to really start to see people come back, but the Delta variant has really prevented that from occurring. But it seems like the new year, from what we're hearing, it looks like companies really have just delayed the restart until the new year. So we think the January-March period will be a good barometer of what's going to happen. One of the interesting things, though, that we are expecting, and it is a bit of a challenge, is what I refer to as uneven distribution of ridership. So we know that, we suspect that people still are going to work from home a few days a week. But that probably will not be distributed evenly throughout the week. So, for example, we expect Monday and Friday to actually our ridership to be quite low, but by Wednesday we're going to probably be close to 90%. So that provides some challenges on our system. There may be days where our buses are running fairly empty, and other days where our buses are overloaded. Hopefully, this will kind of get people to kind of spread out the days that they work. But that may take.
And there's the operator shortage, which was manufactured intentionally. This was a manufactured shortage.
Some time. Also, perception of downtown Portland. That may be preventing people from going back onto TriMet. And then lastly, the operator shortage, which I think you've all heard about, does impact our ability to restore service. Of course, our operator shortage is reflective of the entire economy. There's a labor shortage throughout the region, particularly in the driving.
There was no labor shortage until governments of the world decided to shut down the world. Now, all of a sudden, there's a labor shortage. Do you understand? This was manufactured. This didn't happen by accident. These elites are immune from all of this. Now, the people getting hurt are the ones that are using your fucking shitty service, and you're immune from that. You people don't care about them, or you'd have your labor shortage. You would figure that out right now. You would raise those wages, start at 30, top out at 40. But you're not going to do that, are you? Because you're neoliberal ghouls, and every one of you are collaborators in this
Industry. Next slide, please.
They're just like nodding. Oh yeah, right. Just the way it is. We have this fucked up country. It's just the way it is. Just the way it is.
So the next slide is, so what are we doing to address this? And some of you may have heard about this. We are pursuing something we're calling...
Let me make this point, okay, because it's important. 6%, I said it 100 times, 6% of the TRIMET budget comes from fares, only 6%. 17% of the operating budget of the buses and trains comes from fares. If you cut the entire fare structure, all you would need to do is cut 17% of your service. That's what you would, and make it free. Because the amount that the fares pay for is 17%. My recommendation to this agency would be to just get rid of the fares, look at your pre-COVID service, cut that by 17%, and go from there. But, you know, that's too simple for these bureaucrats. They have to complicate everything because that's how they keep their jobs.
Calling the comprehensive service analysis. It's actually going to get a new name that is less planarese, that the public can digest a little easier.
Right.
And what it essentially is, it's two parts. It's a transit market study where we're really trying to understand what has happened to our market. Are people going to come back? But not only that, but what markets have stayed with us, and where should we be investing our...
Yeah, this is disgusting. You know, this is just disgusting. You know, they've destroyed their transit system, and not only here but everywhere. And now you have these fucking elites. All the elites and all the transit systems in the entire country are all still getting full pay at home, sucking off the tit of the taxpayer, doing nothing, coming up with this nonsense. When only 17%, in TriMet's case, I mean, New York City, 50% of the operating budget comes from fares. TriMet 17%. So I mean, they should never have. They cut their service 20%, and then they got bailed out by the feds, and they still kept it cut 90%. Now I don't even think it's 90. I think it's worse than that because there's still big holes in their service. And we'll never know the truth because they lie to us. They're not honest people. They're government, and government. These people are liars.
Resources. And then lastly, kind of that last piece is, okay, now that we know where the markets are and how the markets change.
See, they're still talking about markets. This is not a free market. He's talking about markets. See, this is why our life is a mess, because people like Tom here are controlling things. And I got nothing against Tom. He's been there forever, but I mean, he's the problem. They're looking at this from the wrong perspectives. They've over-bureaucratized it. They've created the shortage on purpose. And now they're just fucking with us with all this nonsense.
What changes do we need to make to the system? And that can result in reallocation of service hours, changes to the network, the frequency, the span, even new buses, larger buses in some areas.
Yeah, they're still doing all their pork barrels. Like I said a million times, it's a joke, and the joke's on us, unfortunately.
Maybe larger buses during the rush hour, so we don't need to run so many buses, but we run larger buses, just fewer of them, so we can absorb the capacity. And even looking into new mobility opportunities. The next slide, please. I think I just have 1 to 2 more slides. Here we go. And then also on the amenities and access side, we know that part of the experience is going and waiting for the bus. And so we want to increase the number of shelters. Actually, we have already been increasing the number of shelters. We want to continue with that, potentially even look.
You hear that, Eric? I wonder if they're doing it.
Look at a new shelter design, potentially looking at replacing shelters that have been out on the system for a very long time. And then improving access. A lot of times people get off the bus and they step into mud, or if you're a person in a mobility device, you can't get on the bus because there's grass between the sidewalk and the curb. So expanding the number of landing pads and curb extensions, as well as getting into partnerships with the jurisdictions about having them build more sidewalk, and in exchange we provide more shelters. And the next slide, I think that might have been my last one.
All right.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, let's cut that there because I have to do the Chuck post. Yes, okay. I'm going to say it again. They're working backwards. It's a bureaucracy. It's a bureaucracy that seeks to confuse us. They just need to restore the service. Is what they need to. It's just that simple. It's only 17% of the operating costs. You got a whole bunch of money from the feds. What'd you do with it? What did you do with it? You didn't restore the service. You got a few cleaners. What'd you do with that money, Dessous? They're going backwards. They need to go. I don't know, man. I just, they're so aggravating to watch because you have these disconnected elites in charge of our whole lives. Not just this. Every single aspect of our lives is controlled by these disconnected elites, and they're leading us down the cliff. Okay. And luckily, I'm almost 70. I really don't care anymore about anything because the world's already been ruined. It doesn't matter to me anymore. It's just sad to see how there's so much suffering at the hands of these elites. I hear it on the scanner, riders being left behind, runs being so much suffering because of the TRIMET and the management of the TRIMET. No coverage of it. The only place you'll hear the suffering is from me and Rippy on Twitter or from my obscure blog. But those people that are sitting at this meeting are not helping. They're just stealing your money. And the service is awful, and they have nothing here to offer us that's going to help that. Over and out.